Welcome to About Town, a program about the 169 towns in the state of Connecticut. And as of today, there still are 169 towns. And my guest today is the Honorable Gail Lavielle.
Good morning, Margaret.
Okay. Well, you're in the 143rd district, which is across the line in Wilton.
That's right.
Yeah. But you represent two other towns?
Norwalk and Westport.
Yes. So you've
as well as Wilton.
The whole territory. Yeah. And I guess when you represent part of it, you basically represent all of it because people, for an example, the people in, I think it was Stratford, in the 120th?
I think it's the 120th.
Yes.
I'm not sure.
And the 122nd. And they were handed, 79 of them were handed the wrong ballots, and they didn't even realize it.
They were at the same polling place, the two state rep elections.
Yeah.
And one batch of ballots for one state rep was actually given to the people voting in the other state rep district. And so that election is still being contested. Mm-hmm. Because I think the vote difference after a recount was something like 17 or 18 votes.
I think it was 13.
The teens.
Yes.
In any event. And so it's still being contested, and the courts threw it back to the House of Representatives. So we'll be having a special election, probably.
Oh, you think?
Guess. I think so.
Can't they decide tough noogies? I mean...
I don't think they can invalidate that. It would be very strange. I think the last time it was done, there was a committee of equal numbers of Democrats and Republicans.
Oh, that's right. It's 2 and 2. Yes, yes.
So hopefully, because I don't really think it is fair. However many ballots that was, 70-something.
79.
The 79 people did not get to vote for their state representative, and they did show up.
Mm-hmm. Our election system should not be buyer beware. You know, like you have to look. I mean, the way things get cut up into districts, who knows? You know, I mean, in Weston, we're lucky we cut it right half in the middle on our Senate district.
Well, look at my district.
So.
Look at my district.
Gosh.
Which is 48% Wilton, 40% Norwalk, and 12% Westport.
Wow.
And you couldn't find a more disparate district, really. And it's. I think I'm the only person who actually knows where it is. It's
well, that's true. Even they put the wrong signs on the streets, probably. Where they do, in Weston, we're always getting that. You know, you get the signs for the one who's from the other half. You know, but in any event, congratulations on your victory.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
And I'm very much looking forward to watching online, to watching the legislature. Starts when? January 3rd?
January 9th.
9th. Good. I'm glad. Okay.
Yeah, it goes on till June 5th.
Okay.
And I think it's going to be a very long 5 months.
And I would think the reason for that is that you have to come, the governor has a budget, and when does he present that?
It's usually the second week in February.
Okay. And do you have any role to play in any of this?
Well, I have a new role.
Oh, tell us about it.
This session. For the last, for people who don't know, all of our committees in the legislature mm-hmm. are joint House and Senate. Mm-hmm. And each committee has 2 chairs and 2 ranking members. Mm-hmm. And the 2 chairs are always one House, one Senate from the majority party. And the ranking members are one House, one Senate from the minority party. Mm-hmm. And of course, because the House is bigger than the Senate, mm-hmm. We have a lot more House members on each committee mm-hmm. than Senate members. Mm-hmm. So the House essentially controls the committees. Some members of the Senate would dispute that, but a vote is a vote. Mm-hmm. So there are more House votes. Mm-hmm. And for the past 4 years, I've been, and still am today as we sit here, ranking member of the Education Committee. Mm-hmm. This term, I'm going to be ranking member of the Appropriations Committee.
Whoa!
Which means I'll be the lead Republican minority member on the committee that writes the budget.
How does it work? Now, I guess this is a case of one party's ruling all 3, you know, the House, the Senate, and the governor's thing. So,
right.
The budget that for example, when there was a Democratic a Republican governor, like she would give her speech, or he would give his speech, and then they'd rip it up, and then you'd have to rewrite the whole thing because the Democrats would do their own. Am I being partisan when I say that, or?
Well, no, I think the exercise when there was a Republican governor and the two majorities in the chambers were Democrat, they would very much write their own, but be very conscious that a veto was a possibility. Mm-hmm. And that was the case in the last term when our numbers were almost equal in both the Senate and the House. They were very, very nearly equal in the Senate because it was 18 and 18, but the lieutenant governor still had a deciding vote. So that they've always had a majority in both chambers since I've been in the legislature, which is for the past 8 years. I never served under a Republican governor. But under a Democratic governor, there's still a lot of rewriting that goes on. And it is not the governor who writes the budget, ever. The governor provides a very detailed budget in February, but then the Appropriations Committee goes away and first has a very long series of every state agency presents. There's a public hearing on every state agency's budget that has been proposed by the governor. These take place at night. And then after that, there's a lot of discussion in the committee. We have subcommittee work sessions. And those take about 3 weeks. Meetings in the afternoon. We see the agency heads again. And everybody from both parties meets. And then there is a final sort of subcommittee presentation of recommendations to the chairs and ranking members. And then the chairs go away. And they write the majority budget. The minority recommendations are in there from the subcommittee work sessions, but they are not always taken into account. And then very often the minority prepares its own budget. And sometimes it's run as an amendment to the majority budget. Sometimes it's not run at all.
Well, that's true. It couldn't be run if they don't let you.
Well, that's right.
Yeah.
And they can't exactly prevent us from running an amendment on the floor, but it's been done. It's been done.
Yes. In my memory, even.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I've seen all kinds of things in the last 8 years.
Yes.
But it's kind of nice to be able to take a vote on it if we do run a budget. We'll see. We'll see what we do this year. Of course, last year they didn't run a budget. They didn't.
Right.
They didn't have a budget until October, something like that, and we had 9.
Yes. Yes.
So eventually one of ours passed.
Right.
And then that was vetoed by the governor, and then we
for my folks at home, it would be 2 years ago, not just last year.
Well, no, it was actually 2017. We're still in 2018.
Okay.
And again, we are, of course, seeing each other today on Christmas Eve day.
That's right. And I understand Santa Claus is bringing the governor-elect a present.
Is that so?
Yes, I think it was 80 billion, or whatever.
Well, I certainly hope so.
Yes. That's another thing. How, with a brand new governor who's, I've met him, I've been through a lot of stuff through my League of Women Voters stuff. He's very eager and positive guy. But here he is, basically, with his experiences, perhaps not even as long as yours on a local board of finance, but that's his government experience. And he's not a stupid man, but still, I have no doubt that it's going to be a shock when he finds out that his grand ideas and his very good ideas, and he even paid for the $250,000 worth of preliminary studies that were done.
That's
out
true.
Of his pocket.
Yeah.
That's a sign of being committed, as opposed to being committed. But really, he's trying. He
appears to be.
Yeah.
He appears to be. I've met him a couple of times. I don't know him. So I can't guess at what he really has in his head. someone asked me a couple of weeks ago, do you have any confidence that there is a will on the part of the new governor and the two majorities to do what's necessary to fix Connecticut's budgetary status and finances and economy? And I said, as for the governor, I don't know. I really can't say. I hope so. For the majority leadership in both the House and the Senate, I have unfortunately not seen anything that gives me any confidence at all that they are willing to change the policies that they've been putting in place for the last 8 years. And I hope I'm wrong, and I hope that
actually,
they will change their minds.
I hope you're right, because I think what will happen is there are enough Democrats who are aware of what's going on, so that the Republicans can help them, and the governor, perhaps.
I just don't know. I just don't know. Now, I will tell you one thing, because I like to say good things when something happens, and I don't like anything to sound like doom and gloom or always no. The governor has not made very many appointments outside of his own staff, but he has made one, which is to the agency that everyone loves to hate. He's suggested that he is going to nominate the former president of Metro North, Joe Giulietti, to run the DOT. And I think that is a great appointment.
Right.
I worked a lot with Joe Giulietti when he was president of Metro North. And he was the one who helped me get the schedule change for the early morning train on the Danbury line. I rode the trains and got a petition and went to public hearings and went to New York to see him specially, and he got his entire staff, his entire management staff, in to sit with him and me to answer any questions I had. I sent a transcript to my constituents of that meeting. He was so helpful and so open and so willing to make changes insofar as he could on Metro North. Remember, at that time, he was not working for Connecticut. He was working for the Metro North Railroad. And he knows railroads. He also knows Connecticut. And I think that, and there aren't many people out there who work for railroads. It's hard to do a national search in that domain. So I'm very encouraged by that appointment.
Well, I am thrilled to hear that, because, that, I think, you have to start somewhere, and get the ball rolling and have good things happen.
Well, yeah, and I hope that he will. We hear all the time about new revenues for transportation and all that, but no one ever looks at the costs, at how much the DOT spends day after day after day on things we don't need, or on things like very high costs per mile for highways. And our costs are 3 to 4 times higher than the national average. Why would that be? And someone needs to look into that. It's most likely a lot to do with labor costs, but there may be other things.
The light bulb just went on. Nobody's ever talked about outsourcing construction.
Not much. No, they haven't.
Not that necessarily is the answer either. I'm just thinking.
Yeah. Well, there is, as you know, a big government union constituency in this state, which tends to
really
have a lot of power. I'm being so diplomatic. It has nothing to do with any other type of union. It's simply our government, state government, public sector union, which, and I have to say, I feel kind of bad for them, because they've had so many promises made to them that can't be kept by their leadership, such as they will get their full pensions in 20 years, they will get their full health care, they will get all those things when they retire, because at the rate we're going, they will not. The money is not there.
Now the other side of that argument would be, well, but they can't. They blah, 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 blah. We've got a contract. Now tell me what happens then,
Well, that is, of course, up to the governor. but there are a number of ways to deal with that. My preference would be that somebody tell them the actual truth and convince them that it is in their interest to open the contract, because it is.
Yeah, I know.
To have a contract that makes promises that cannot, under any circumstances, be kept can't be good for anybody. And there are some very interesting moves that might be made for the teachers' pensions, which are slightly less underfunded than the state employees' pensions.
Yeah, and the teachers thing, I think, is that not is there not something in? I think Jody Rell did it. So,
well, that's those bonds have now been paid off.
oh, they have. Okay.
So we've now reached the point where something just has to be done. And if nothing is, in another 10 years, the annual contribution will be something like $6 million. $6 billion, pardon me.
Yeah.
Which is, it's a third of the annual budget.
That's right. But there won't be any children in the state to teach. But there'll be a contract.
At the rate we're going. That's right, yeah. So there's a commission that's been working that was due to hand in a report this month. They've asked for an extension, of course. It's the Pension Sustainability Commission, and they're talking about either handing the proceeds of the lottery over to the pensions for 30 years, or something called a legacy obligation trust, which is not a bad idea. It's just unclear if Connecticut has enough property to do this. But actually selling or leasing or repurposing state assets and then making them profitable. And that's done in a lot of places, actually. It's not dumb. But I understand, I'm not sure if this is correct, but the last I heard, DEEP property would not be eligible for this.
That's correct.
And neither would DOT property. That pretty much kills a whole lot of the property.
Well,
the truth of all this is that it's difficult, and it can be done, but you have to do it through good management, which means you've got to do a whole lot of difficult things at the same time. And I do not mean when I say that, oh, it's going to be a year of very difficult choices. I'm a little bit sick of hearing that. I've never said it myself.
Yeah, right.
It's not a question of choices so much as it is, what do you do when you don't have enough money? Whether you're a business, a nonprofit, a state, whatever, you have to cut your spending some. You have to reduce your taxes some so that your tax base grows. Because yes, if you reduce your taxes, at least your tax base doesn't shrink. And it would probably grow some. And then while you're doing that, you have to encourage more business to come in and encourage fewer retirees to leave. All of that involves taxes, but many other things as well. And while you're doing those three things, you've also got to make some intelligent investments. You don't stop making investments in infrastructure, for example, but you stop investing in infrastructure that's new, that no one's using right now because it doesn't exist, but you improve the infrastructure you have and make it really efficient. You make sure your schools work, and you do make, and social services that are necessary. But you have to do all of this at once, and doing it at once is very difficult because everybody wants a magic bullet, and there is no magic bullet. So you start, some of the retirement, the retiree taxes, the ones that they feel the most, are not actually very big revenue generators, so it's not that hard to get rid of them. The estate tax, get rid of it. Just get rid of it. Don't reduce it. Don't make it level with the federal tax. Just get rid of it. And the gift tax is very small. These are double-digit million figures. And then the tax on pension income and Social Security income, that comes afterwards. Do those. Get that. Stop talking about the income tax. Leave it where it is for a while. Fix this stuff so you get more taxpayers. And meanwhile, you're cutting some of your spending. and you're getting more taxpayers, and so you're growing your economy, you're growing your tax base. And little by little, you can do all these things, but it's not going to happen overnight. But you also, in order to get businesses here, you've got to convince them that this is a really serious long-term plan and you're going to stick to it. Right?
Right.
And nobody's wanted to do that. They don't want to commit. They want to be free to spend as much money as they want anytime they want. And that's not the way life works.
Well, I think I would say you're absolutely right, but I'm wondering, I also thought I just read somewhere that in 1991, the capital gains tax used to be a whole lot more onerous for those who had any capital gains. But in order to get the one vote they needed from Greenwich, actually.
Yes, it was Greenwich.
Yes.
I wasn't here, but I know it was
I
Greenwich.
remember it, and I'm not going to mention his name. Anyway, the deal was, voted for this income tax, but they changed the capital gains in such a way that there was no problem. So there's that, I'm not suggesting anyone should go back to that.
Well, they also promised a spending cap at that time, and we only and there was a constitutional amendment, and 80% of the voters voted for it, and we didn't actually implement that till last year.
Right.
We actually did get a lot of our provisions because of the parity in numbers into the budget last year.
Okay.
We got that in, and
Great.
we now have a spending cap.
Okay. I'm so happy that you were reelected, and it was a tough year for Republicans to get reelected, I would think. And was there any vision that those who got elected in Connecticut had that those who didn't?
Well, it's hard to speak for other people. I know that it was tougher in Fairfield County than anywhere else. A lot of the newer seats that we had in the minority in eastern Connecticut hung on very, very well. And those had, in prior years, been difficult. We've had a demographic change in Fairfield County. The voter registration numbers have changed very, very significantly. So in our small towns, they are mostly no longer predominantly Republican. There was also there was the factor that a lot of people were paying attention to national politics. I think there were a large number of protest votes. There's no way to know how many. But I'll tell you what I noticed personally. Where we're used to a large number of people in Fairfield County being predominantly concerned about the economic issues. Part of the reason there aren't as many anymore is because they were so concerned that they left. And in my district particularly, I can tell you there's been at least a 50% turnover.
Wow.
Among Republicans since I first ran in 2010. It really has changed. There are people who are very concerned about the economy. They're not necessarily Democrats. They could be unaffiliated. They might also be Republicans, who knows. But there's a large number of people who, while concerned about the economy, are more interested in other things. They simply are focused on other things. Some of them are very focused on the environment. Some of them are very focused on different kinds of social issues, like workplace issues. I personally never experienced any as a woman. I never thought about being a woman. It just didn't occur to me, but some people are very concerned about that. People are, and I understand this very well, they have children in schools, they're concerned about guns. And they are more focused on these things than they are on the economy, even if they're concerned about it. But it's secondary. When you're representative, you've got to be deferential. You've got to acknowledge you've heard things. You've got to acknowledge you understand. If you've done something about it, you have to say so. And in some of those areas I have. In all of those areas I have. And it's a question of some people maybe don't mention it because the economy is supposed to be the main message. But I think what stood out to me was that there's a great concern among a lot of the new people who've moved to Connecticut about those who are concerned about national politics, that Connecticut be focused on something I'd call respect for the individual. And I get that. I think it's important. You should respect everybody. You should listen to everybody. You should never disparage someone's point of view, even when you disagree with it, even if you disagree violently with it. You mustn't disparage them. But there's also something else that I believe, and I think this was probably the most important thing that I wanted to drive home to people, which was, all of this is important to you because it's important to you and I represent you, it's important to me. But I honestly believe, I know for a fact, that restoring Connecticut's economy and telling the truth about what our situation is and fixing it is itself a very important matter of respect for the individual.
Yeah.
It is a primary question of respect for the individual. And again, in those other areas I mentioned, the Connecticut legislature has been very attentive. It's done, I think, in the estimation of most of these people who are concerned about these things, done a good job. But it's failed abysmally in showing respect for people in terms of the economy and Connecticut's finances, and of creating an environment here where people can count on a future, because so many have left and so many are planning to leave. So I think that was an important message to convey, and it still is.
Yeah.
Because some of the other issues are easier to articulate. There are those who are very, there's a lot of people who want to legalize marijuana, whether you want to or whether you don't want to. It's easy to say, let's legalize it, let's not legalize it. But let's make sure that we make our pension funds solvent. That's a lot more arcane. It doesn't speak maybe to young people. It doesn't speak to people who don't spend much time on this. So I think that if we don't deal with these issues, we are showing no respect for the people of Connecticut at all if we let the economy descend further and further into the abyss. And that's just the way it is.
Couldn't have said it better myself, I can assure you. That is exactly, the respect for people, and not thinking not thinking that they're not worthy of having government really working for them in every respect. And I am so grateful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Margaret.
Okay, great. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.